Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Kidney Coach YouTube channel. I am naturopath Fiona Chin, co-founder of Kidney Coach and co-founder of Kaigenesis, a supplement range for people diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, looking for people that want to increase their EGFR and get better results with kidney disease. And I am so excited to be joined by three absolute experts in the field of oncology and advanced biotech technologies when it comes to treating advanced cancers that might not have any other options. And Dr. Grinberg reached out to me and said, we have to have a conversation with Dr. Halpert and Dr. Gonzalez. These men are amazing when it comes to giving people with advanced cancers opportunities and technologies that people may not know about, that are new. And I know a lot about Dr. Halpert's work, so I'm really interested to hear more about Dr. Gonzalez as well, but where they're working with really hard to treat cancers like pancreatic cancers and glioblastomas and things like that. I know the FDA is really approving some of their stuff. So this is going to be a really, really exciting conversation for anyone out there wanting to know what is coming down the forefront of advanced cancers. But let me formally introduce all my amazing guests. So for anyone that's a regular to the Kidney Coach YouTube channel, you will have come across Dr. Grinberg before. So Dr. Grinberg is an integrative functional medicine MD practitioner in California, USA. And he's an amazing, he's my go-to person for peptide medicine and all things like that. But he's also very well versed in helping and support people with oncology. And that's because Dr. Grinberg has an interest and he often is an advisor to biotech companies. So he's got this amazing advantage of connecting his patients with the latest scientific biotech methods that are coming down the pipeline. He knows with which conventional treatments may or may not work. And then he's really able to connect his patients with maybe some more out-of-the-box treatments that might be really great for supporting patients and getting better clinical outcomes. So Dr. Grinberg is very well versed in that. He has advantages over maybe some of your common oncologists because he is in the biotech space. And so he is very well connected to people like Dr. Halpert and Dr. Gonzalez who are doing really amazing things. So Dr. Gonzalez, he is a PhD, a Bachelor of Science from the University of California. He's got a long-term standing interest, and this actually really piqued my interest in spinal cord injuries and how that relates to the immune system. So he's done extensive experience and his extensive work in the stem cell culture and biology. He has extensive knowledge in all aspects of cell biology and health, and he teaches absolutely worldwide on regenerative medicine and maintaining the immune system. So he really looks at, and Dr. Gonzalez, when you speak, please update anything that I've missed, but I know you've got a passion about maintaining the immune system and how to really optimize it when people are having anything where the immune system isn't working properly, be that cancer, autoimmune disease, and all of those sort of things. So working in that biotech space of looking at things like stem cells, immune health, and ways to slow down the biological clock, both inside and out. He's got several patents in cell therapeutics based field, and he's worked extensively on secretome and exosome stem cell products. And he has taught and spoken and led many conferences nationwide in regenerative medicine. And then we've got Dr. Halpert. He's earned his doctorate at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. And then he spent 10 years at Baylor College in the Houston as a cancer immunologist. Extensive in research. I know he's got a heap of patents. I know the FDA is fast-tracked his dendritic cell protocol working with glioblastomas and pancreatic cancer. He was awarded he won the Breakthrough in Cancer Award that was just last year, right? In 2004. He's now heading up Immunocine, which is a cancer treatment center. So he's really in the depths and the roots of advancing cancer treatments and really working as an immunologist and really looking at all of those kind of things. So three, what I would call brainiacs. It's a lovely Australian word, but people that are really passionate about helping people, really passionate about thinking outside the box, and have been doing this for a very, very long time. So I'm going to stop talking and hand it across to the people that everyone wants to hear from. We'll start with you, Dr. Grinberg, because you're obviously in clinical practice and seeing where patients are feeling frustrated, stuck, not getting the results from maybe what a traditional medical model would give patients when they're diagnosed with incurable diseases, autoimmune diseases, and particularly the big scary word cancer, which I think our statistics show it's like nearly 50% of people at one stage or another will get affected with it. So talk to me about why you have been so curious in the biotech industry and what you're seeing, and why you would reach out to people like Dr. Gonzalez and Dr. Halpert, and how that process works for you.
Hello, everyone. And thank you, Fiona, for your introduction. And thank you for helping us to create this podcast and to talk on the topic of cancer, and particularly on the topic of advanced treatments for hard to treat cancers in advanced stages. So types of cancer that are not so easily treatable in conventional medicine. As a clinician working in integrative medicine, I see a lot of patients who feel frustrated, desperate, and fearful, particularly when they're dealing with these kinds of cancers, advanced stages of cancer, or rare cancers, or cancers that are notoriously hard to treat. And while conventional oncology made enormous progress in recent decades and developed a lot of new interventions, still, unfortunately, there are a huge number of patients that dealing with very tough situations and get very confused when they need to make decisions about how to continue their treatment, what treatments to seek, what treatments may help them. Even for scientists, it's so difficult to navigate in the area when they hear all these new words: neoantigens, dendritic cell vaccine, activated immune cell vaccines, biclonal antibodies, mRNA-based vaccines. So many clinical trials and new developments happen in the field of immunotherapy, and definitely patients feel safer when they hear about therapies that based on activating or somehow utilizing body's natural systems to treat and cure cancers versus conventional chemotherapy that was originally based on dealing with rapidly dividing cells and stopping cells division, utilizing different tools. But obviously, people understand that it also affects healthy cells, and people have very significant side effects, and efficiencies of conventional chemotherapy or radiation, unfortunately, is limited. At the same time, patients dealing with cancers have tough choices to make. Frequently, they hear very scary verdicts from conventional oncologists, and when they ask them when they try to find hope, they don't find a lot of it hearing what conventional treatment may offer. And also another logistical problem is that when patients ask their conventional oncologist about advanced treatment, clinical trials, novel treatments, the conventional medicine representatives not always well educated about most recent advances in scientifically based treatments, and just based on reducing their liability, they may say no instead of we don't know or we haven't read about that yet. Luckily, we see more and more oncologists getting more educated and discussing with patients these novel treatments, but still not the case all the time. So even harder choice for patients is to decide if they got educated about novel treatments, immunotherapies. It's hard for them to decide which one will be particularly good in their case, because all these novel treatments, they have success in some cases, in some cell cases of cancer, in some different stages of cancer, and not necessarily they are best working with other cell types of cancer, or in a clinical case, depending on the location of metastatic illness, it may be different so many nuances that require entire treatment team where scientists developing these treatments, clinicians and oncologists work together to decide and make optimal for the patient decision. Another shadow area is combining these treatments with standard chemotherapies, radiation, and other surgery, other methods. It's also a very complex question that is, of course, still in development. It takes years to build up data, build up statistics to be able to give, say, very specific recommendations. That's why it requires, at this time, it requires case-by-case discussion and decision-making for each particular patient. And we are privileged and honored to have Dr. Gonzalez, Dr. Halpert here because they're working on front lines of developing and implementing these advanced therapies for cancer. We have great opportunity to hear from them what specifically they do, and then we can continue and discuss some other clinical aspects and details and questions.
Thank you, Dr. Grinberg. I know for me, if, my dad died of cancer 2 years ago, and I know for me, the way that my brain works, that if I was diagnosed with something like that, and I know what I'm like with an autoimmune disease, I go down every rabbit hole possible looking for any answers, any treatments out there that could possibly give me a better result. And I know if I was going to do that, I would come across, if I had cancer, I would come across Dr. Halpert and Dr. Gonzalez. So I'm going to hand it across to you first, Dr. Halpert, because Immunocine is doing some really amazing things. And we've chatted before, and I was just blown away by what you're doing, the fact that the FDA has fast-tracked your treatments. I know you're not working inside the USA at the moment, but hopefully with all the changes you've had through there and with the new administration coming in that seems a little bit more pro-health, we might see you get in there a little bit faster. But tell me more about what you're doing with dendritic cells, because I find this fascinating. And what I love about it is, for my brain, that is logical. It seems so logical to me when you explain it to me. I'm like, of course, this just sounds like what we should be doing. So tell us more about the dendritic cells, and you're getting them to point in the right direction, loading them up with cannons. I think when we spoke about it before, I find this fascinating, and again, complete common sense. So walk me through it.
Sure. And thank you for having me on your podcast. And you know, Dr. Grinberg's exactly right. It is a quagmire out there. It is, especially this day and age, where we almost have too much information and it's hard to vet what is real and what isn't. I don't know how someone who is a quote unquote layperson can make heads or tails of the path they should go. It does seem very challenging, and it's something we are working alongside our own core technology on. How do we improve this, that now that we've seen these issues? So yeah, I'll tell this kind of as a little bit of a story, and I'll try to be brief because it covers a lot of time. You know, what is cancer, right? I mean, cancer is a normal, healthy cell that has had some sort of internal mutation that was not fixed, and therefore the replication process loses control, and one cell becomes two becomes four becomes eight, and so on until you have a mass that is lighting up on a scan, and we call this a tumor. The body has internal mechanisms to fix that. Obviously, in this case, it hasn't, and that's a whole different podcast as to what causes the cancer in the first place. It's a whole different topic. But we have a secondary critical mechanism to protect us from this, and that is the immune system, which is our defense system. People know in general that, oh yes, the immune system protects us from bacteria and viruses and germs, but it also actually has mechanisms to destroy burgeoning cancers, and that'll include dendritic cells, killer T cells, natural killer cells. I mean, for anyone who's lived any amount of time, their immune system has worked, because these micro cancers or micro clusters kind of always happen at one point or another, and our immune system normally takes care of it. Obviously here there's been a defect, and so we almost need to view cancer in addition to other issues. We need to view it as an immunological disorder. We've got immunological ignorance happening here, where the problem isn't necessarily that the immune system can't eliminate it, but that it doesn't know it's there. So where's the failure? And we focus on the dendritic cell. Now, why? Because the dendritic cell it's an immune cell that was discovered in the 1970s, and very quickly we learned it is the general of the immune system army. It runs the immune system. It is its job to see the threat and organize an optimal immune response. There is no other cell at the top of the pyramid. This is not debated. This is very well established immunology 101 stuff. The dendritic cell is critically important to an immune response. So it makes sense that in the 1990s, 30 years ago, a lot of effort was put into, well, why don't we use dendritic cells to fight cancer? Unfortunately, science was too rudimentary at that point. An analogy I like to use is, even if you have the right key, if you just randomly slam it into the door's not going to open. And at some point, everyone sort of moved on, and we've got to come up with other ways to sort of innervate and hijack the immune system. And this leads to some other modalities that your listeners may have come across, such as checkpoint inhibitors or CAR T cell therapy. But biology has not changed. The dendritic cell still runs the show. And so, yes, starting as just an academic researcher and nothing more, with no ambitions of necessarily, I did want to change the world, but very few people actually get to that point. So we're working on dendritic cells, my group in the Texas Medical Center. And we're still working with dendritic cells. We know something's been missed. Something's been overlooked. We are missing a mechanism. And I'm going to boil, this would take, as you said earlier, it might take 5 hours if I really get into all the science of it. But what no one had seemed to realize before is that there are actually, if we want to look at it this way, 2 different keys to the dendritic cell, both of which need to be turned simultaneously. Why it's designed that way, it actually makes perfect sense the more you dive into it, as a fail-safe mechanism for not having erroneous activation. But both keys, both of these mechanisms need to be activated and loaded simultaneously. No one had done that. And myself and my partners, all immunologists, the minute we saw this and then verified it enough to believe it, we realized this is a game changer. We have not, and this is 20 years ago now, but we had not up to that point realized no one's using the immune system correctly. No one's actually used, it's not fair to say dendritic cells can't work. No one's used them right. And so, we move on, we publish papers, we talk about the mechanism. We are very open about this. It is great science. It is a huge derivation. It's not dogmatic. It's not the way we thought dendritic cells work. As we move forward, we start to realize the potential power of it. And this obviously leads to, well, maybe this could be used to actually reprogram a patient's immune response to fight cancer. And to be clear, we're never going to claim this is a magical cure. Cancer is still evil. It is still tricky. It still fights. And so even using all the right weapons at your disposal, many of which, Dr. Grinberg has used repeatedly, doesn't guarantee an outcome. However, as an immunologist, I could not give you a reason to not physiologically get your immune system activated and fighting the cancer. You have an all-star on your team, and it's sitting on the sideline looking the other way. Why? And so does putting him in the game guarantee a win? No, but it's going to drastically improve the odds and give us it's going to change the narrative. It's going to give us a different outlook. And so, this is just biology. There's no magic drug here. There's no toxin. It's not about what is added. It's about how it is added. And so if we can grab a sample of a target, be it from the prostate, the liver, the lung, the immune system regulates all of that. And we can have the patient's own dendritic cells. We now know how to turn both keys and activate the dendritic cells correctly to actually and optimally get a patient's immune system in the game, engaged and fighting the cancer. And you know, we have a myriad of studies and results. We do have 4 FDA sanctioned clinical trials throughout the United States at this point at different junctures. 2 of them have been fast-tracked. We've been fast-tracked for glioblastoma, actually unmethylated glioblastoma, and pancreatic ductal adenocarcinoma. Coming up is angiosarcoma and refractory melanoma. And these are at institutions like MD Anderson, Dana-Farber, UT Health, Baylor College of Medicine, and a variety of others. I think we have about 20 sites onboarded for the phase 2B coming up in about 3 weeks for the glioblastoma trial. And the FDA is very bullish on this, and I do see this actually getting to an approval part. But I honestly just got tired of people who would understand the science, do their due diligence, see the value of it, and say, okay, I might have to do standard of care. I get it. I might have to do this other thing, but wouldn't I want to also do this? Wouldn't I want to get my immune system engaged? And I would say, absolutely, you do. And then they would say, great, put me in the trial. And I'd say, that's not how trials work. I mean, I can't. And so, you know, there's only so many times you can do that and send people away before it really starts to rub at your moral compass when you know what this is. When you're the scientist and you know that this is a safe and very effective option to, you know, really improve odds. This led me on a journey for about 3 years to try and figure out where we could offer this safely, ethically, correctly in various medical tourism sites. And I'm not going to mention any of them by name, but there are other clinics, there are other groups out there. And it was my naive hope that they were all doing things correctly, the way you would potentially expect in a first-rate operation. And, you know, come to learn that's just not always true. Maybe they don't have a lab that is qualified to make this and they don't care. Maybe they don't even have an oncologist on staff. Maybe they are very proud of their bait and switch pricing models, which, you know, none of that's going to work for me. And it was only when I met Dr. Gonzalez here, who has experience setting up and running, you know, CGMP practicing labs outside of the United States and understands what it takes to truly make a cell therapy product correctly, did we decide, I think we can do this. And that was what led to the formation of Immunocine, was this core technology. And then, you know, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. We're not going to cut corners. And yes, as we've moved on, we've added some other modalities. We've added some other compassionate options. We've added more doctors. We've added more weapons to give to the patient for their disposal, not just even while they're with us, but even when they go home. We have a team that continues to work with them. And maybe we need to work on their metabolics, their diet. Maybe there is something else they could be doing to better fuel their body. But at the end of the day, if you want to get your immune system top down, physiologically rectified to finally see the cancer and start fighting, this is the technology. This is, and it is unique to us, but this is what the science says. This is what you need to do, and this gives you your best shot at getting off of a racetrack that goes around and around in pointless circles to one that actually has a successful finish line.
And so my understanding is that you take a sample of the cancer and then the patient's dendritic cells, and you're basically programming them. So like you say, no drugs, nothing like that. Like you say, the dendritic cells are off, checking out the view of the palm trees over there. And you're like, hello, dudes, we need to go this way. So you're basically taking them, sending them to boot camp, saying, this is what we need to look at. They load back in. So first off, you have to make sure you get a sample of that cancer. So you need to get in before a patient's had maybe any surgery, the cancer's been excised and those sort of things. And then in go the dendritic cells. Now they're programmed, they're boot camped, you've told them exactly what to do, which I love because this is my common sense brain. So now they're pointed in the right direction. Like you say, you've now got the immune system on board, so it makes complete sense. And then if you want to add things, be it if the patient's preference is natural medicine, so we're adding, you know, medicinal mushrooms or adding B17 or whatever, some peptides, whatever it is for that patient, or if you want to add chemotherapy in the conventional medicines, at least the immune system is looking in the right direction and you've armed them correctly. Have I got that right? Is that my understanding of it, of sort of the basis, I know, layman term version of what you do?
Yes, absolutely. That is correct. We use a sample of the patient's own cancer, and you're right that sometimes we get calls from patients where they have unfortunately waited too long, and too long in the bad way, where there's really no time left, and then too long in a good way, where standard of care has temporarily worked or the surgery was successful, but there's no sample now. There's nothing to use as the target. And so Dr. Gonzalez and I can talk about a solution we've come up with for that, to get to these patients before that happens and store some tumor tissue. We can send a kit and we can think ahead. But right, we take that sample of the cancer, we break it down to its complete genetic component, which does include its mRNA, which unfortunately, thanks to COVID, now people don't know what to make of that, but it's different. But we need its entire genetic signature. And this is important because not only that, but the complete protein library. This is everything this cancer is and or could be. We are not cherry picking. We are not saying we know better than your own dedicated immune system that can see things we can't, and we're picking our favorite 10 neoantigens. We're not doing that. We're going to give all the information to those dendritic cells in the lab in this double pathway, this two-pronged approach that is so critical. To be clear, there are other groups using dendritic cells. I have not seen one that is double loading or hitting both these pathways. Now, if they are, we're going to have a whole patent infringement issue, but I have not seen anyone do it, and that makes perfect sense because as of today, it's still not dogmatic, and it's going to take time. It takes time for science and medicine to evolve. And when we do that, the dendritic cells wake up. You can almost see them wake up. They change their entire genetic signature, and something that should, or in theory would promote no immunogenicity, has now led to the largest activation I, as an immunologist, have ever seen. And when we put those back into the patient, and importantly, we put them near draining functional lymph nodes, which is where they go. They don't go, you don't infuse them in blood. You don't randomly inject them in your belly. That's not where they go. But when you put them where they go, more often than not, the patient will now experience fatigue, low-grade fever. They may have flu-like symptoms. They may have muscle aches. Basically, they're sick. So think about it. All we've really done is taken out what already is in the patient, done something in the lab where we reintroduce them, and then we put it back into the patient, and now they're sick. They are sick. They have cancer. Their body has just not recognized it, and now all of a sudden it's very obvious that it is recognizing it. I mean, one of the top symptoms we get as patients will say they basically can feel it in their tumors. So if they've got a tumor in their rib and their hip, they'll say, I can feel swelling or pain in that location. What do you think you're feeling? I mean, we didn't even touch that area. It's the immune system has found it. It's fighting. Again, this doesn't guarantee anything, can't do that. But the fact that your immune system has found the cancer and is fighting it, now we have a chance. And yeah, as you said, if ultimately the team and the patient decide, we do need to add some chemo, we do need to slow the cancer down, we do need to radiate a section just to make sure it doesn't get dangerous. Okay, but it's a different story. These barbaric treatments that people don't like, and I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm not saying every Immunocine patient does that. Plenty have not. But the reason people often don't want to do those is because the outcome is still horrible. You're going to do that. You're going to feel like junk, and then you're still going to lose. That's not what we have here. Now we have a chance to win because with your immune system educated and engaged, it knows what it's looking for. And if you can get a handle on the cancer now, you have a chance at completely eliminating it and having immunological memory, moving on with your life. And cancer becomes a speed bump, not a brick wall. And so that's that's our goal.
Amazing. And I love, before I hand over to Dr. Gonzalez, I love in your clinical trials, you pick the easiest cancers, a bit of pancreatic cancer, some glioblastoma, let's just go for the really easy ones and no one will notice. So, I've been for pretty rather didn't get that.
Funny story on that real quick. The business people they're so angry at us. So yes, apparently this is not how you do it. So the issue is when we started picking trials, the only people on the business side or the team were the scientists. There were no business people. And we said, okay, people think dendritic cells can't work. let's pick the toughest cancers we can think of and show that if they work there, I mean, where do you think, if it can work for unmethylated glioblastoma, which, has a normal median survival about 7.5 months. And for the record, ours is right now at 22 months. We haven't reached median survival. So we'll see. We're going pretty good. We have potentially some patients that may be fine, which is not really possible in glioblastoma. So that would be huge. Or if it can work there, why can't it work for melanoma? Why can't it work for prostate cancer? I mean, it's the immune system, again, does it care if it's in the prostate or the breast? I mean, someday statistics will, I'm sure, bear out one way or the other. But that's what we were thinking. Now, as the business people came on, apparently everyone hates these cancers because nothing ever works and no one wants to fund it. Fortunately, the results are in. We're publishing the manuscript now. They're very good, so we'll be okay. But it's an interesting story how we picked those, because if we had been a more normal biotech structure to start with, it never would have happened. We would have been shut down by the money people. So it worked out.
Well, I love that it did, and I love that story because it just shows that patient care comes first. So, Dr. Gonzalez, talk to me about where you fit in with all of this and your role. I know you, as Dr. Halpert said, you sort of came in and sort of helped him navigate how to set up clinics and things like that. But I know obviously with your background, you've got your own take on things. I know you're very interested in the preserving and promoting the immune system. So talk to me how you work with patients diagnosed with cancers and what you've been working on in your patents as well.
Yeah, I mean, I had the honor and the privilege to meet Dr. Halpert, many years ago. And my focus has always been the immune system because I studied as my PhD. The difference is, well, what transpires following spinal cord injury and the immune system, because the neat thing about what Matt says is you pick the hardest thing. And if you think in retrospect, if you look at your body, there's only one true immune system, and the immune system is basically on the external part. It's in the blood, the vasculature system. And if you look at the brain and the spinal cord, they're in a skull. They're in its own entity. Actually, they are, technically speaking, sort of their own entity in itself. And there really isn't an immune system in there. And in theory, a long time ago, it was thought that the immune system should not go into, your peripheral immune system should not go into the central nervous system. And actually, it shouldn't go in there and do anything. There's essentially one cell type, which is a microglia. That's an immune cell that's in the brain and in the spinal cord. And it has some function there, but it doesn't work the correct way as the remainder of the entire immune system that we actually have. And thinking of targeting, the craziness is when I first met Dr. Halpert and we talked about this, and I was like, yeah, I understand the complex because I understand you have a spinal cord injury, and what causes the detriment in the spinal cord injury is that infiltration of T cells that go in and cause more damage and more harm. But the neat thing about the dendritic cell is I take it back to, it's the general, and the general picks up the perpetrator, and that perpetrator can now be shown to everybody that if there's many perpetrators that look like this, you need to go out and get them. It's going to make those clones. It's going to build that entire military system that's going to be consistently, severely now that actually looks. But the biggest issue with a lot of cancer patients, what I've seen and where my work comes in more is, in the context of cancer, they all have an exhausted immune system. And they're not mounting what's called a pro-inflammatory, a correct mounted kill response. It's because our systems are burdened on a regular basis with viruses, with bacteria, with challenges when you go outside, that mutated cell, when you go outside and hit the sun, you have a mutated cell. There's a limited amount of capacity that the immune system can handle. And as you age, exactly what you had said earlier, actually the stat is once you've hit 50 years of age, you are 50% more prone to have cancer the remainder of your life. Once you hit 60, that number jumps up exponentially to over 70%. So it's pretty crazy. It's because the immune system becomes exhausted. And then you try to balance that with the stuff that I work with, which is the longevity part, where you don't want to mount too much of a response, you have to have a regulated response, because then you have a thing called chronic inflammation, and you age, and you have a bunch of other disorders that transpire. But in cancer, you have to have it, because every time you see it, Dr. Halpert will tell you, and I've seen it too. You look at their blood, the blood work, and you will see it's exhausted. There's not a mounted response. That's why they can't kill. That's why they can't recognize. That's why it can't do what is needed. So essentially what is being done is that it's giving the immune system a fighting chance to actually target directly and kill what it needs to kill. You know, the neat thing is what, you know, me being, I'm a cell biologist and have looked at every different cell and know the way the dendritic cells in a petri dish, the way it looks. And you'll see it that it looks, you know, it just looks like a regular cell that maybe has like a little bit, it's like this. It has these little, like, sort of almost like tentacles on the outside of it. But when you activate this, it changes, and it's a completely different cell type that you can actually see. That's what makes it really neat about it. And if you think of it within the body too, it's very, very similarly, because what it has to do is now present what he just told you, the protein structure, the entire gamesh of everything that's in that tumor, the protein and the message, to the immune system, and give it the opportunity to find it and recognize it, chop it up, chew it up, and present it in many different forms. So the immune system can now come. As soon as the immune system attaches to it, now it's the immune system's basic job to make clones and expand. And that's when you get that sick feeling, when the patients say they feel fluish, they feel sick. It's just like when you have a flu. The same thing transpires, just like when you react to a real vaccine. That's what's supposed to transpire, is this type of thing. My focus is clear cut. That's why we work together, is maintaining immune health. There is nothing more important, because every single disease in the body has, unfortunately, an immune component to it. And working hand in hand, which Dr. Grinberg knows a lot about me with this, is, you know, nutrition plays such an important part of it. Here in the United States, especially in the United States, we know the FDA just banned, we just won a victory. They just banned, you know, the dye. Yeah, they won. That's a big victory. But what's transpiring, you know, what people don't understand is you're being intoxicated, you're being poisoned. And if you have cancer and you don't have this, this is what Immunocine does and specializes in. We're going to see you, we're going to take care of you, but let's take a step back and let's look at the baby basics of, are you eating the right things? Are you doing specific exercise that you can do? The team is there to support you, to tell you exactly step A through Z what you need to do. And when you're done with us, you're really not done with us, because the supporting team is still there to help you through whatever. I don't, you know, hey, I'm done, I feel better, you know, my tumors have shrunk, feeling so much better. What is the next step for me? We're still here for you. And that's what makes it a neat team. And it's been, you know, it's not just, you know, it's you see us two here, but the team that has been mounted in the backdrop is beyond impressive. You know, you have, you know, naturopathic oncologists, doctor oncologists, you have oncologists, you have radiological interventionists, you have general practitioners, you have nurse practitioners. It's a big team. And that is all there to support the patients that unfortunately are going through this terrible times. You know, unfortunately with Immunocine, we're always, a lot of time is, we're what we call with the with NFL, the Hail Mary. We are the Hail Mary. They come last minute. They've exhausted all forms of chemo, radiation, any other immunotherapeutics that may work, and they're in bad shape. And the success rate, which Dr. Halpert can talk to you about, has been phenomenal. It's unheard of. It's so unheard of that we'll go to conferences and talk about it, and people are just like, how is this possible? Other medical practitioners, how is this possible? Well, it is possible because it's being done the right way, and it's forcing your immune system to recognize something that shouldn't be there.
For anyone listening, because you're, I mean, what I love about what I'm hearing is just how integrative this protocol is. And it's, you know, you're basically putting Michael Jordan on your team and getting him to play basketball and face in the right direction. But you're also then making sure the rest of the team is a bit of an all-star as well by basic things that, as a naturopath, I would know, making sure that your nutrition's correct and your vitamin status is correct and stress levels and all those sort of things. In the work that you do, are there things, because I know people will put this in the comments and ask, are there standout things that you see if you were diagnosed with cancer that are sort of the basic must 101s when it comes to supporting the immune system, from what people can do for free, I guess, the home things that people can do that really give you the biggest bang for your buck, that make the biggest difference when it comes to getting that immune system from an exhausted state to at least being in the game again?
Something. One thing that I talked about and Dr. Grinberg knows well is diet. Unfortunately, as you age, 60% of your immune system, or the activation of such, is in the gut. And as you age, you do not absorb things the correct way. I'm a really big opponent of telling people, listen, you might think you're eating the right things, you might think you're taking the right supplements, you have cancer, go get some IV nutrition. Go do IV nutrition. And it's now actually growing a lot, where just general practitioners are telling individuals, or oncologists are telling individuals, you're going to go through chemo, you should consider doing this too. And it's night and day, because I've seen it personally with patients. Individuals don't lose hair, they're not as comfortable, they're not as uncomfortable, they don't have the nausea, they feel much better while they're going through these difficult times, because essentially, in the context of chemo, you're wiping out the entire system. The gut flora, everything, things are not going to work correctly. You have to supplement one way. There is no better way than supplementing directly through the veins. Just those are basic things that are inexpensive. These are things that work. I mean, I'm a big individual with getting the food thing as right as possible. I mean, if you're adding fuel to the fire by just putting processed stuff in, sugar in, guess where the sugar is going to go? And if you look at this, and if you look at this stuff in vitro and in the body, a tumor gets surrounded by a bunch of vasculature, a bunch of arteries, veins, all this flow. And that's what ends up happening. It picks up all the nutrients first and foremost. Wherever it's normally going to go in your gut, and which is will circulate in your body to take care of your organs, guess where it's actually going, a lot of it? It's actually going to proliferate and grow first and foremost there. Because it's sort of like it has a mind of its own, this growth, this abnormal growth has a mind of its own. And this is a big problem. Get the diet correctly, do that. Take care of your immune system by supplementing it the correct way, because most likely you're not absorbing things. We don't know why. I mean, this is not solved. The flora in the gut is not correct. Something's not going on. Get some IV nutrition inside of you. And the other thing is, get out there and get some sunlight, walk. There's no reason why you can't walk. It's free. Put your feet on the ground. I mean, there is an electrical current that transpires when you put your feet on the ground. You should be doing this. These are simple, basic things that don't cost anything, or cost minimal in the context of IV nutrition, to help maintain immune health. And especially in the let's get you ready for getting a dendritic cell vaccine. Let's get your immune system optimized. And these are things that they're going to go through. The team is going to go through this with you.
Yeah, let me echo that real quick, because I want to build off of what you said and add to it. So yeah, diet. I mean, yes, we now know the microbiome and gut health is critically tied to immune responses in general, and let alone cancer. So to add to that, there are just some probiotics and dietary fiber you need to take. And so, I mean, Bifidobacterium and Akkermansia are two of my favorite. They've been pretty well studied at this point to be pretty anti-tumorigenic. There's an interesting study that came out not too long ago that showed just making sure you get at least 20 grams a day of dietary fiber drastically improves results and responsiveness to treatments for cancer. It was a pretty stark difference, and that was in a pretty interesting clinical trial, actually based here in Houston. So it's, again, simple stuff. Take care of your gut. It is another a very important thing. Two very cliche answers, but they do kind of matter, is you've got to find it's almost, I know it's easier said than done, but you need to calm down. Everyone has a tendency to be, we're generally stressed, and of course, cancer is a stressful situation. But the reality is there have been a number of studies that show that this leads to, it's self-defeating. The more you stress, the more cortisol you've got leaking out. And guess what cleans up that cortisol? It's your immune system. Well, that's not what you want your immune system doing. And so you need to take a deep breath. Just because there is a fight doesn't mean the fight's already over. You need to get good quality sleep. During those deep sleep moments is when your body actually processes immunological memory and makes new immune cells. But to all of that, this is something we did learn at Immunocine. We have this core technology, this Lamborghini, and that's great. But we did learn that while some patients absolutely already have a Dr. Grinberg in their corner or a good home team, others don't. They don't know what they need to do with their diet or their, supplements or what am I lacking? So we've created a couple of support teams as a part of Immunocine, which is just, it comes with the package. Not only do we do this core reprogramming of your immune system, but we'll give you a functional medicine doctor to go through your labs and to personalize a plan for you. We'll give you an integrative oncologist. This is just going to be, and this is part of your team, not just before Cancun or during, but after when you go home. So when you want to know what is next, they're still right there telling you, I want to see these next labs and let's keep going. Your copper's too high. We need to get it down. Or your vitamin D looks way off. I mean, it is a case by case because people are so different, but so I want to give some, I think Dr. Gonzalez, I think we all want to give some standard answers, but the reality is it is personal. And so we just decided to lean into that with Immunocine and just, okay, well, we will give every patient their own personal team then that will help them with this. So, but yeah, absolutely. There's again,
may I
yeah,
add
go
something?
ahead.
Yes. Thank you so much for emphasizing all this and nowadays I frequently have patients who already implement everything that you mentioned, and unfortunately still the cancers progress. So I wanted, while we have Dr. Gonzalez here, also ask about one more thing. Like it's true that patients with cancer have exhausted immune system, and very important part of immune system that finds and destroys cancer cells, NK cells, and the work with proliferating patients' NK cells and reintroducing them to patient's body is very important. And I've seen great progress in my patients who utilize this treatment in addition to everything else that was mentioned. And it's also important for patients to be educated about this opportunity because they may harvest and proliferate the NK cells before they get chemotherapy or radiation interventions that potentially further weaken and change the immune system. And this modality of treatment should also be discussed, as we see very good results with this treatment.
Yeah, the natural killer cell, as it says, it's the natural killer cell. It's part of the immediate immune response. And unfortunately, as you age, that natural killer cell becomes what we call just a dormant office worker. And some of the other things that we actually do is, we can take natural killer cells from a patient, we can grow them up, activate them, and put them back in. My work is mostly focused more in the context, believe it or not, because the natural killer cell also does kill mutated cells directly. But my work has been more focused on removal of senescence, which senescence is essentially a zombie cell that just basically occupies space in the body. And it's now known that senescence, originally we thought senescence is the mechanism to stop cells from becoming tumorigenic, to stop cells from dividing. But now we all know stopping cells from dividing, which is aging in general, which causes wrinkles, gray hair, fibrosis of the lung, the liver, is senescence, which is a zombie cell that occupies space. The same thing, if we activate an NK cell, which we can do to eliminate senescence, you now give that opportunity. We sort of go back to activating the immune system because you now give the body that opportunity that the bone marrow can now produce new progeny, new cells that need to occupy the space of what's been removed. And you now sort of reactivate the immune system to get a general health. And you give that opportunity, to actually basically have a fighting chance, or your immune system a fighting chance, because you're activating them and then putting them back into somebody's system. So that's another platform that we work with that works well. not directly targeted towards killing tumors, killing anything, more directly targeting towards what we just talked about, maintaining immune health, cleaning up the immune system, removing the bad guys that are in the immune system, and then giving the immune system an opportunity to fight.
And
Would you see
other-
sorry, Dr. Grinberg, I just wanted to ask, would you see using things like natural killer cells as a more advanced version than, say, the dasatinib quercetin combination or something like FOXO4 DRI? Is natural killer cells sort of above that when it comes to clearing up senescence?
I believe the only true evidence of clearing immunosenescence that we've seen is actually natural killer cells. I have not seen any clear evidence of doing any of these senolytics removing immunosenescence. I'm
Right,
talking
thank
about, I mean, we published a paper on this. We have a paper demonstrating it clearly. We have videos showing you clearly natural killer cells removing senescence, removing these zombie cells from them, directly targeting, surveilling areas, directly targeting, neat videos of it, and removing it. So it's clear evidence of it. I believe it's superior because it is a systemic infusion. It's directly targeting towards the immune system. And, when you're talking about putting billions of cells into an area to remove senescence, we have evidence that it works.
Great, thanks for clarifying that. Sorry, Dr. Grinberg, yes.
Yes, and Dr. Gonzalez, are there any clinical trials, ongoing clinical trials, studying the anti-tumor effect of proliferating NK cells? Because in the past there were, right?
There still are. There's quite a few studies out there with NK cells in cancer. Over 1,000 studies out there if you look at clinical studies that are out there with NK cells in cancer. I have not seen, in the context of cancer, as much of a robust response that I have seen with the dendritic cell. In the context of solid tumors, absolutely not. I have not. I've never seen what I've seen with the technology we're doing at Immunocine, as far as, solid tumors.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak as an immunologist on that because this is a little bit my bread and butter, right? So you've got picture two cells side by side. You've got your killer T cells and your natural killer cells. Killer T cells, they get their information of the specific antigens, the mutated antigens they need to find. And when they find them being expressed on a specific cell, their job is to eliminate that cell. Tell that cell, look, you've got this weird antigen. We're not sure that you're safe. Please die. And the cell will do it. Well, cancers are tricky, or they think they are. And sometimes what they'll do is they'll figure out those antigens are being targeted. And so they will stop expressing them. They will actually downregulate that, or it's called antigenic shedding. They'll just stop. They'll try to be invisible by saying, okay, well, we got rid of it and now you can't find it. Ironically, the expression of that is actually the off switch for the natural killer cell, meaning when they get rid of it, that is what activates the natural killer cell to say, hey, I don't even see you expressing what you're supposed to, so you are dangerous and you need to die. It's amazing how our immune system works that way, how we have both sides covered. And so the killer T cells and the natural killer cells both work very effectively. If you had a tumor where 50% were expressing antigens and 50% weren't, right, just killing one side of that, honestly, all that's going to do is just create a vacuum. It'll slow the cancer. It will by time, but it's also just kind of creating a vacuum where the remaining will move into it and ultimately become non-responsive to the treatment because, you never went after it. And that's one of the reasons we focus on the dendritic cell. Is the dendritic cell is the general, is above that. It is able to actually, and we have evidence of this, we do our own immunological analysis of every patient to show them this, but it not only provides the education and activation to the killer T cells, but it also activates the natural killer cells as well. And so that doesn't mean there wouldn't be maybe benefit to then, adding another bolus of natural killer cells. Like, sure, I mean, add another swath of killer cells that are going to, survey the body and kill cancer. But that's one of the benefits to the dendritic cells. You're going to more optimally activate and prime your entire immune system rather than just pick one cell type, be it a helper T cell, a killer T cell, a natural killer cell, M1 macrophage. We can go on and on. Immunologists like to make new names for new cells all the time. but that's so definitely a big fan of natural killer cells, just to point out that it all kind of works together, and you want to use all of these components and go as high as you can on the pyramid, because you're going to get a more comprehensive immune response.
Thank you. And I'm on the side that meets patients, and unfortunately, majority of patients just learn about this potential for dendritic cell vaccine, and they already have tumors removed, different interventions done. So unfortunately, they will not be able to utilize your approach, Matt. And I have to give them some solution and some hope and some help. So in these cases, I was directing them to locations where they could have the NK cells proliferated and retransfused and still see good results. How would you comment on this?
How would I comment on it? No, I think that's a great idea. So obviously, right, you have to deal the hand you're dealt in the moment. And if you've got a patient who is at the moment not a candidate for the Immunocine treatment because there's no tumor to sample, absolutely, I would strongly support the use of activated natural killer cells to try and continue to clean up the cells you don't see in the scan, and to try to truly get rid of that, as well as, of course, the other things I'm sure you already do to help boost along their immune response. So no, I have no negative to that. I will, Dr. Gonzalez and I have recognized this problem. We get that call too much. Like, I don't like that. So we've created basically a kit and storage system, somewhat analogous to the cord blood banking thing, where and I will tell you, it's slightly early. I don't know, by the time you air this, it might be out, but we're starting an initiative called the Immunocine Preserve, which is specifically designed to try to educate and get to patients before it's too late, and say, hey, we're not telling you don't do your chemo or your radiation or your surgery. Do what you want to do, but before it's too late, store some tumor sample. Make sure we have it cryopreserved and ready to go. And then down the road, when it makes sense, we can build this personalized vaccine for you. And we're not happy when people are sad they've missed their window to do that, because they know there's a decent chance the cancer's still in there or will come back. And so, I definitely invite everyone listening who is thinking, this all sounds really cool, but I don't know if I want to stop my current treatment because it's working. That's fine. Contact us anyway, and maybe we can send you a kit. It's not very hard. I mean, you need a doctor. You need a process coming up to get some of that tumor material. But once you do, it's not very hard to ship and store and move to Immunocine later. So I'm going to put that as a public service announcement out there, because it can be for someone out there. It will literally be a life-changing decision.
Many people want to, like Dr. Halpert said, just continue with their standard of care or go the standard of care route. There's possibilities that if you go the standard of care route, yes, you maybe shrink some tumors that are there, but then we can't get a biopsy. So that's why we talked about the the preserve. It's because you basically have an opportunity to, if you want to go that route, you were just diagnosed, let us take that tissue, because later on down the line, let's say even if you're told there's no evidence of disease, the simple term of no evidence of disease, what people don't understand, and cell biologists like myself completely understand, is 1 million cells in a ball is basically the size of a speck. That's how difficult. That is not registerable in anything. 1 billion cells in a ball, believe it or not, is the tip of a fingernail. A really small tip of the fingernail. That's difficult to detect in a scan. So that's what people don't understand. And these things can be circulating now. There's new technology with looking at circulating tumor cells, looking at this type of technology where you can understand where you're at possibly. But still, there's mechanisms built in within the body, within mutated cells, like a virus, that try to find ways to basically live in your body without being detected. And this is the difficult part. So if this happens to surface again, because once you've had cancer one time and it wants to surface again, year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it may be, you're ready because we have the tissue. And actually, you made one step towards basically making your own personalized dendritic cell to activate your immune system against what was targeted before that possibly can grow again.
Amazing. I love all of this technology. And I think it's, again, anyone listening, you know, like saying cord banking's become so popular, it makes common sense that you would maybe want to bank some of your cancer tissue cells. And you can speak to the stats, but I know the recurrence of cancers sort of 1, 2, 3, 4 years down the track, and depending on the type of cancer, it can be quite high. So at least you're almost banking some certainty that you've got a backup plan. And especially as science and medicine progresses, you know, all of that just gets better and better. So I think that makes absolute sense. Sorry, go to Grinberg, what you're going to ask?
I just wanted to add one more practical point. So what I also see in my patients, sometimes people get deviated and attracted to different locations using the same terminology, dendritic cell vaccines, nucleotide-based vaccines, so proliferated NK cells, and they get attracted by a significantly lower price that they see there compared to the places that have reliable and solid science underlying these technologies. And unfortunately, the outcome is very sad and tragic. And I wanted to ask Dr. Gonzalez and Dr. Halpert to provide guidelines how for patients how to avoid getting attracted to these locations that just exploit their fear and desperation.
It's a fantastic question, and the good thing about actually both of us, which we have the same similarities, is everything that we've developed is academic in nature is one. Two, there is a U.S. basis and a U.S. license towards the stuff that we're actually doing. There are publications behind everything that we're actually doing. It's not just regular nonsense out there. We understand that, you know, these modalities are expensive and there's people out there exploiting other people. You really have to, you know, sit down and do your own diligence. What's the backdrop? What's the background of the individuals that are offering you whatever they're offering you? Where does the technology come from? What's the basis of the technology? Are there any peer-reviewed scientific publications in the basis of what they're talking to you about? And then make an educated decision on it.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm sure, and Dr. Gonzalez, as scientists, we both know, you know, when we're in the lab doing experiments, there was kind of a joke on, well, if you want for in my lab, it was, you know, if you want the experiment to work, you're going to spend the extra money on the top quality reagents and cytokines and things. And if you didn't really care, you were just sort of fishing, yeah, buy the cheap stuff. And if, you know, to put it another way, we could make this much cheaper. I could cut a ton of corners. It's hard to do that though and look someone in the face. For me, I think for an academic, for PhDs, it's hard to, when you're built so much, your whole life and your career is built on integrity and people trusting your word. I don't know how I cut corners and cheap out, you know, and we can buy really cheap ingredients and make a very disgusting pizza. And if that's what you want to put your life on, sure. You know, it's expensive to have an oncologist on staff. Maybe we don't need one. Do we really need a CGMP practicing lab? We can use a closet. I mean, it might get contaminated, but who cares? You know, yeah, we could do that. Of course, I say that facetiously. We're not doing that. And I would say some due diligence things, and I've written some pieces on it. If you want to go to our site, I've actually written on this, but here's some things. You know, when you look at our publications, we did not just pick 1,000. I could easily find 1,000 publications on dendritic cells and why they're great. Those are not the publications we send to people. Publications we send, I'm an author on them. So first and foremost, as Dr. Engel said, we're academics. It's our name on the scientific papers. We're not borrowing something else or claiming something else as our own. It is our own work, our own effort. We're the ones in the lab with our hands. And so I do think publications are key. I do think if you have a real science, you should, you know, for lack of a better term, man up and publish. We do have clinical trials. You know, I hear all this, oh, the FDA won't let us do a clinical trial. That's nonsense. There are 1,000 clinical trials on diet for cancer. I mean, if you want to do a trial, you can do a trial. I'm not saying it's easy, but if you legitimately believe you have something that is the magic cure, like some of these places claim, oh, this cures 90% of cancer, it seems odd then you would hide in a singular destination instead of going for that big biotech market and the billions and billions of dollars there, let alone like mainstream. Why wouldn't you want it to be accepted all over the place? Why, and so I say do trials. I say, do publications. You should be able to explain your science, at least to some degree. There are places that it's interesting. We hear these stories from patients all the time. I ask them what they do and they told me, don't worry about it. I mean, that seems like a red flag to me. So a little bit of it is trust your gut. Some places they just, I don't know, they're a little out there. Yeah. And then, I mean, I'll say this too, and this is something, again, Dr. Gonzalez and I mentioned, like, I'm wary of saying our stats are very good, but here's the thing, there is such a thing as, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably, right? If you have stage 4 cancer, and someone says, come here, we have cured 96% of stage 4 cancer patients.
Run.
Do you really believe that? And it's just not. Some of it's just common sense. But yes, I have written on this. This is actually on our site as well, and we're always happy to help. I mean, something else we do with Immunocine, which wasn't by design, but some of the patients will ask us to vet these other groups. Happy to. Our goal is not to just knock everyone else down and say we're the only ones that are awesome and everyone else is horrible. That's not what we do. If there's another group out there with good science, doing things the right way, we said, this looks reasonable. It's a patient's choice. They're doing something different than us, but it does look like a reasonable plan of attack or strategy. And if it doesn't, if they're bragging about, I mean, there was one group putting in their flyer claiming that their treatment was FDA approved. They said, this is FDA approved, and it's not. And I was very baffled by this. In a little further exploration, what they mean to say is that they got an IND for a phase 1 clinical trial approved, which they then didn't even do. Okay, do you know let me explain how different that is. That means they proposed to the FDA that they were going to do a safety study. The FDA said, we'll let you do it. We approve you do that study, of which they then didn't do. The way they're proposing that to people is, this is FDA approved. Now I have a big problem. That's basically just fraud. And if that's how they're presenting it, yeah, I have a major issue with that, the way that's being presented. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if either of you guys have more to add, but it's a little scary out there sometimes.
Yes, definitely. I have something to add. So usually for patients dealing with advanced stages of cancer, time is very important issue, and they want to get some efficient, effective treatment as soon as possible. And there are some even more obvious red flags. For example, if someone suggests that they expand or proliferate NK cells within few days, within 5 days, there are certain biological things like cycle of division of NK cells that obviously no one can expedite. And I see people come back from some location and tell me that they got expanded NK cells. I ask them how many days it took the facility to do it. They say 3, 5 days, 10 days. I'm very, it's a very unpleasant surprise because it doesn't get along with the biological scientific knowledge.
Exactly. Yeah. It's what people don't understand is processes such as cell culture. It's not only the processes, but making sure that the product is safe. So normally you make a product, you freeze a product, that's no less than a 14-day window, around there. And then you're talking about testing, you got to do some testing. There's got to be some in-process testing in there. This stuff takes time. to get done. It's not an easy process. You know, for instance, with us with NK cells, it's a 6-week process with all the testing and everything that needs to be done. It's not that straightforward. The dendritic cell vaccine, you know, you're going to be there 2 to 3 weeks. It just depends on the individual, but you're going to be there for quite a bit with the testing and everything. It just takes some time.
Yeah. I think it's such a minefield for patients to navigate, and especially when you've been given a diagnosis, say stage 4 cancer, and you, like you say, you might not have been given enough time, and so people get desperate. And I think for anyone out there listening to this, that's why I wanted to put this podcast together, because obviously everything that we do at Kidney Coach, we're very big about making sure we check everything. And so I can vouch for the team at Immunocine as well, you know, and I obviously trust Dr. Grinberg and his team as well. So I just want to say that, yes, we, you know, going to places and making sure that's all vetted. So we've done the hard work for you. I can definitely vouch for these amazing humans that obviously came into it from scientists, not about making money, hence why Dr. Halpert started with glioblastomas and pancreatic cancer, and he made the good point, no one does that if you really are about just making money. So that for me was a big green tick when I came across that. So before we wrap up, is there anything else that anyone wants to add before we wrap this podcast up?
No, it's been an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Well,
Absolutely.
I want to thank you. Yeah, I want to thank all three of you, because I know how busy you are, and I also want to thank you for the integrity that you bring to the field, for being pioneers and changing things and changing the face of cancer. You know, I'm really excited. I know you're still working on things, but I'm really excited to see these clinical trials and the FDA approval come through, and just what you're able to do with that. And I love that you're so integrative, and you're treating the person, not the disease, the cause, not the effect, working with individuals, putting a whole team together from a naturopathic point of view. That is like music to my ears. It's not just firing some sort of MRA in there and saying goodbye, good luck to you, you know, that whole post care, and the fact that even though you're the scientist, you genuinely care about the patient outcomes says a lot for me. So anyone out there wanting to get in touch with the team at Immunocine, I'll put the details below. From memory, when you go into the website, you can click a link and book to have a one-on-one to see if this treatment will work for you. And I can, and Dr. Halpert did mention it, but if they don't think the treatment is for you, they will tell you. They're not going to get you to do anything if they don't think they can help. I very much know that if they go, this isn't for you, they'll be the first to tell you that. So there's a lot of integrity behind the people here. And if you want to contact Dr. Grinberg and have him on your team, I'll put his details below. And if you want to know more about what we do, head to www.kidneycoach.com. Make sure you hit subscribe and like. And if you have questions for these amazing gentlemen, put them in the comments below. And if there's anything there that I can pass on to them or pass back, let me know. And if there's a certain podcast or topics that you want these amazing men to come back and do, let us know as well. Thank you all for being part of our community. Gentlemen, thank you again for your time, your knowledge, your expertise, and your genuine care about people out there. I really appreciate it.
Thank you
Thanks
very
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
We'll see you
everybody.
next time.
Thanks, guys.